Hi, my name's Erin McChesney, and we're here filming an episode of Tevis Talks. I'm with my dear friend Diane Ripley, and we're going to talk a little bit about her influence on the world of endurance through the books that she's written, how her horse did this amazing trip on the American River Ride, which is the oldest sanctioned 50-mile endurance ride in the world, known through the American Endurance Ride Conference. She also participated in the Great American Horse Race, riding across a great deal of American territory, and has many Tevis finishes. She's a dear friend. We share some horses together. We have a great love for a stallion named Bezatol that really was a pinnacle horse in the history of endurance riding. And so I'd just like to introduce my dear friend Diane Ripley. So welcome.
Thank you. So good to be here.
Great to be here. So tell me a little bit about, let's kind of start at the beginning. When did you start riding Tevis?
Well, I first moved to Auburn in late 1965 and met Ina Robinson. Ina Robinson was the niece of Wendell Roby, the first woman to receive her Tevis Cup buckle in 1956, riding with Uncle Wendell. I had moved from Maryland and done a lot of fox hunting and hunter-jumper work back in Maryland and on the East Coast, so Ina took me under her wing, introduced me to Uncle Wendell, and I finished the Tevis Cup for the first time in 1967 with Dr. Richard Barcelow and Sharon Sayre as my sponsors.
Wow. How many Tevis buckles do you have?
15.
15. That's incredible. That's awesome. And out of those, are any of those top tens? I mean, is there any other things to those aside from your finishes that you could talk about or elaborate on?
I rode little Eric, a horse that Smokey Killen and I shared together, mostly mine because he was too small for Smokey. Smokey preferred Big Old Bandit. And I finished third behind Marjorie Pryor, who was one of my students. And Marjorie was riding Edelweiss Fritz. I was nursing my baby, Michelle, at the time, so I had to spend a little bit longer time at the vet checks, and Marge won that first year, and Eric and I finished third.
Wow.
So that was a fun ride. And then I finished fifth the first time I rode Cricket, after she reared over backwards with me at the start. I had a mild concussion and a broken elbow, and Dr. Carrie Ridgway was in my starting group. At that time, we were starting at 2-minute intervals to give people a chance by the time they hit the single track trail that we'd be spread out a little bit. And Carrie put his hand on my back. Barney Dobus started the ride, and Barney picked me up off the ground and put me back on Cricket. He said, "Just hang on, honey, and let her go." So I hung down around her neck. I didn't know my arm was broken at the time. And Carrie held me on her back. By the time we got up to the immigrant monument, I had tucked my arm in my shirt, and Cricket took off. She knew the trail. And my dentist, Dr. Frank Lewis, was my crew. And he met us at Robinson Flat and bandaged, put my arm, wrapped it into my shirt, and gave me some dental pills. I don't know what they were, but I was like a little girl on a merry-go-round pony and just held on, and Cricket took me home.
Wow. I think what's really interesting about this, just these two stories you told us, is Tevis is so interesting, amazing, alluring. Like, you can't not ride the Tevis. You can be nursing a child, and still finish in the top 10. You can have a broken elbow and still finish in the top 10. Like, people have, there's so many stories like this on the Tevis with people who have, against all odds and all reason and rationale, should have said, don't ride today, rode anyway. So that's pretty cool. That I never knew those stories before, and that's pretty awesome. Cricket was an amazing horse.
Yes.
Tell us about Cricket and the American River Ride.
Well, I had been training. Ina Robinson and Betty Veal were racing half Arab Appaloosa horses, and I had trained one of Betty's horses, Toy on Serendipity, for my Tevis horse that year. And 3 days before the ride, she had jammed a stick up in her forearm out in her pasture. So I took her down to the fairgrounds, and Carrie Ridgway checked her out, and he says, oh, honey, this horse, she's lame, she'll never make it. And in those days, news traveled in Auburn. I'd ridden many, many rides with Phil Gardner, riding his little tiny pony Cricket. And I was on my big Appaloosas. So Phil called me and said, how would you like to ride Cricket? He was riding Dr. Barslow's mare, Good Trip, that year. She was much bigger, substantial mare than Cricket. And I said, oh, I'd love to ride Cricket, thank you. I'd only ridden Cricket maybe once or twice, because Phil and I would change horses on training rides. And Cricket was cantankerous, to say the least. And she reared over backwards with me at the start. And, of course, I had worked for Barney Dobus many years, bringing the cows from Rattlesnake to French Meadows every year. So he was the start of the ride, and he put me back up on Cricket, and that was the start of our Tevis.
And did you ride? You rode Cricket on the American River Ride?
Oh, the first American River Ride, yes. My previous husband, David Claggett, and I started the American River Ride with Roe Bailey, Charlie Berrio, and then Phil Gardner got the idea that we needed a record-keeping organization, and that was the beginning of the American River Conference. I mean, the
American Endurance Ride Conference.
Conference. And he wanted to use the proceeds from the American River Ride to finance the beginning of AERC, and I said, absolutely not, because Wendell at that time was totally against the AERC. Wendell felt that the Tevis Cup was the start and should be the model for endurance riding. And so I kept the American River Ride, and Phil started the AERC, and I got Cricket.
And you got Cricket. And she won that ride in a really, like, an amazing amount, like a really short period of time, did she not? Did the two of you finish and win the American River, like?
And best condition, yes. She won the race in 3 hours and 42 minutes. Wow. And Wendell told me when he gave us the first place award that Cricket had beaten the record of the Pony Express riders, and they had used 3 to 5 horses from Sacramento to Auburn.
Wow, that's wild.
I've got the picture in the book.
Yeah, super. I think you said you had a poem about this
yes.
Event that you wanted to share with us.
When I was on the Great American Horse Race, I was very homesick. So I did a lot of journaling, and I wrote this poem. I can say it by heart, but sometimes I miss a little bit of it because I've changed it so many times. And it's called The American. There's a river up there. It's wild and it's free. They call it the American, like you and like me. When I was a child, I went to the place, the Little American Valley, where the river begins, and I saw his face. Flying high in the sky was the eagle above, filling my heart with unconditional love. Now as I pray on a hill so far, far away, I will fly with the eagle, and there I will stay. High in the mountains, overlooking a land where the people are cowards and won't take a stand. The people that lived on the river are gone. I will tell you a story of all that went wrong. The gold miners came with their picks and their pans. Then in came the government and put up their dams. The railroad came through with their monsters on rails. Then came the bikers who paved our horse trails. They polluted the river, killed all our fish, learning only of life from a satellite dish. I'm an old woman now, no longer so fair, but still an American, like that river up there. For that river up there was once wild and once free. They called it the American, like you and like me.
Wow, that's incredible. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure how to segue now. So, you also had the great opportunity to ride the Great American Horse
Yes.
Race. So, I don't know how many people are really familiar with what that means and when it was and what it encompassed. So, what can you tell us about what this is? What was this event, the Great American Horse Race, and when did it happen, and how did it go?
It was Memorial Day, 1976. Herkimer County Fairgrounds, Frankfort, New York. Flags of many countries flying in the warm spring breeze. Bands playing the Star-Spangled Banner. There were 200 horses of every size, shape, and color, and 6 mules. The occasion, the Great American Horse Race, the longest horse race in history. A race across the entire continental United States with a prize of $100,000 for the fastest time. A once-in-a-lifetime opportunity never before attempted and never again to be repeated. The goal, as in 2 centuries preceding, California or bust. Land of gold, land of home. I could read the whole thing, but it's all the history.
So it started in New York.
Yes.
This was 1976.
1976 it started.
And it
Memorial
finished
Day.
in California.
At Cal Expo Sacramento.
In Sacramento.
Yes.
How long did it take for you to ride that distance?
From Memorial Day to Labor Day, all summer.
All summer.
All summer.
How many horses did you have?
We were allowed 2 horses, but both horses had to be on the ground at the same time, or you got double time if your horse had to be trailered for some reason. It got very complicated, the timing.
So you rode one and ponied the other?
Yes. And we could change any time.
Throughout the day.
Throughout the
and
day.
did you ride into the night or start early in the morning to try to increase your timing of getting across, or did they have a starting time, like a window each day that you could ride in?
Well, they had a big camper, and we had an hour in the morning to pick up our card, and they would mark our time when we left within that hour. Mm-hmm. So I always like to leave last and pass everyone. Mm. And because my horses are very competitive, and that was my strategy.
How many miles did you generally ride per day?
the least was probably 30, and the most I think we did make 50, 55 one day across Nevada. Because we lost a lot of time with lawsuits, and it was...
It was a very complicated thing to do because it's a lot of public and private land that you had to deal with. How did they manage with things like highways in major cities? And when you went through those, was there... What kind of things happened in order to get through those parts of our country?
Actually, when we left New York, the back country, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, still had secondary roads and trails. It wasn't until we hit Nebraska, Wyoming, Nevada, where we came primarily on the shoulders of Interstate 80. We rode mostly across Nevada on the railroad tracks with freight trains coming right by us. We could reach out and touch the freight trains.
Wow. That's wild. I forget who won that race.
Well, that is a debate.
Oh, well, here we go. Here's the story.
Verl Norton had 2 mules, Lady Eloise and Leroy. Great big mules. And Verl Norton was a steeplejack from Wyoming, and mules are sounder of legs than horses. And any time we had to go through the hot black tar, any horses with white on any of their legs at all were all blistered, and the mules just trucked on through. There were, I'm going to tell the truth now, there were many, many, many discrepancies on the time cards. Actually, at the finish line, Smokey and I raced in from Watt Avenue Bridge. So we crossed the finish line first.
Wow, that's really something.
Actually, in the records, I think Smokey was 4th and I was 5th. But I explain it, it was very complicated.
You must have encountered some really interesting and maybe, I don't know, crazy weather coming through too. Everything, yeah.
We had a tornado coming through Kansas, and I was on my tiny little 14-hand Arabian Valentina from the Lanigan Ranch in San Ardo. And the tornado was so strong, I thought we were going to be blown away, but she just turned her little back to it, and the tornado went probably within as close to the trailer. It was pretty scary.
Yeah.
Made a lot of Christians that day.
Right. I can imagine. Yeah, I think that's really an extraordinary thing. I feel like for you that's an amazing experience. It's an amazing part of American history that really should be told. I mean, this is, the kind of thing that should be documented in a way and produced to tell the story because of the things that you must have had to encounter and overcome in order to, ride across the entire continent of the United States in a group, in a competitive way. And so that's really something. And while it wasn't an endurance ride, it was an adventure. And that's a really great story. I'm really glad that you shared that with us.
We had shootouts. We had jealous husband came from Australia when he found out his wife was involved with one of the I can go on through stories. Smokey's arm was dislocated when he saved my life from being raped by one of the German contestants. I could go on and on with
So it wasn't
stories.
just American participants, it was an international event.
Linda Tellington Jones brought over what we called the Icelandic team, and they rode Icelandic horses. But the Great American Horse Race went bankrupt as we were coming into Kankakee, Illinois, and we had to go to St. Joe, and Dr. Dave Nicholson and Carrie Ridgway decided that since the Great American Horse Race was bankrupt, that they would start a new ride called the Pony Express Ride. And that would go from St. Joe to Sacramento. And that is the one that Lori Stewart won. So Phil Gardner, Hal Hall, Lori and Rick Stewart, Dr. Rick Stewart, were vet students at the time. So Lori picked up a horse from, I want to say the Rush Creek Ranch, but somewhere she got a horse. And so they broke off in an entirely different race that went south. We stayed primarily north around the route of Interstate 80. So those of us that had started the Great American Horse Race with Hank Cook, Dr. Hank Cook, my dearest mentor of all time, and Dr. Bruce Branscombe from Nevada, they all pulled out. And I called Bruce one night and told him what was happening. So he came back and saved what was left of us.
The race,
he was the hero of the original cross-country race.
Wow, that's really interesting. It's fun for me because hearing you're talking about Tevis and your finishes and riding with Marjorie Pryor. When I won the Tevis in '91 on my mare Cougar's Fete, Marjorie kind of bowling ball moved my parents out of the way and ran down the hill and just tackled me with this hug. And it's such an important moment to have that connection. And then her horse Fritz, we did a lot of time down the trail. And Fritz was a roarer, and he had missing one eye. And you know, by all intents and purposes, if you made a joke out of this horse, he certainly had a lot of reasons why he shouldn't have done what he did. But she won Tevis on him twice. And with one eye, and he had this roaring. You would know when Marjorie was coming up behind you because you would hear this horse with this raspy breathing and everything else. And so that's really cool to think about how, you know, I met these people much later, of course, in life.
Oh, you were a baby.
I was a baby, and but it was very fun. You know, it's really fun to hear the stories of so many that we've lost. So many. We've Hank Cook and Dr. Barcelow and
Carrie.
Wendell and Carrie and
Drew, Nam.
It just there's so many that
Smokey
was a hoot. I have to tell the story about Smokey. So I was talking about, you mentioned the Pony Express rides, and those went on to become very popular. And Dave Nicholson did the Pony Express rides and still does. Now they're called XP rides, all across the western part of the United States. And so I went to a ride in March from Provo, Utah, to go from Provo, Utah to Shelbourne Station, Nevada, 250 miles, 50 miles a day in a straight line in March.
Right.
Now, anybody in their right mind knows better than to ride across Utah and Nevada in March. But there we were. So we packed everything up and we stopped at the last casino in Nevada before we went into Utah. And Smokey's wearing his trench coat. And he's lingering, we're at a buffet, and he's lingering at the bread section.
Oh, of course.
And I'm thinking, I'm just going to walk out. Like, I'm just going to walk out. So 3 days later, when we're back in Nevada, we have ridden now west from Provo, Utah, and we're going along, and Smokey goes, hey, he goes, hey kid, you hungry? He starts pulling out bagels, baguettes, donuts. He's like, oh, I think I got some sourdough in here. I mean, he had all this contraband in his trench coat, And he told story after story after story. I don't remember a mile that I rode that day. I just remember the tone and the rhythm and the tempo of his voice telling these stories and then pulling out these stale bagels, and I'm thinking, holy crap. And growing up in this sport, Smokey knew my mom was a cook.
Oh, of course.
And so Mom always made 4 fried chicken, 4 whole chickens she would fry, and then not macaroni and cheese, a potato salad, and chocolate chip cookies. That was always, everything was the base. And we knew to bring extra because Smokey would always come up and he'd be, hey Gladys, my mom's name is Gladys, hey Gladys, and just we'd feed him, and Potato would do the same thing, and they knew that they could come, and they couldn't borrow hay, but they could come and eat, and they would do that all the time, and so those are always some really, really great memories, and that have been out there. And you and I have known each other for, I don't even know, since I was a child, and
since you moved to Cool.
Since I moved to Cool in '76.
You're a cute little freckle girl.
Still got my freckles and my dimples. And, but, and just always had the most remarkable times together that we've shared over and over and over throughout the years, and it's been really fantastic. But I really enjoy hearing these stories, and it helps to reinforce and remind us all of the depth of this story, and how much Tevis means to so many people. The community that it has developed. I mean, I don't know if Wendell really quite understood what kind of a touchstone he had started when he got this idea to ride a horse for 100 miles in 24 hours, and how it all evolved into what it has become, and how it binds us all together in such very, very complex and important ways.
When Dr. Gordon Ainsley, my brother, first ran on foot the trail and finished, Wendell and Drew said, Gordon, this is going to be much, much bigger than the ride will ever be. And now they draw lots. There are runners from all over the world. And the run has become so much more. It's a totally different event now.
Yeah, the Western States Endurance Run, which was basically spawned, if you will, out of the Tevis, because Gordy Ainsley, he was trying to finish, and every year I was told the story. Every year he would run more and more and more and more of the trail trying to finish the ride. No. He was spending more time on foot, and then finally he decided to run it on foot?
No, actually, Gordy and I went up to Squaw Valley together, and I had only had, he helped me bring Valentina, he and Smokey, down off the mountains of San Ardo. She was basically wild up there. And I'd only had Valentina for maybe 6 months. And Smokey and Bandit ponied us through our first ride, one of the Redwood rides over in Sonoma. And that was all the training that she had. So Gordy went up with me and slept in the back of my horse trailer and led us to the starting line. So to make sure that I wouldn't have another cricket rearing over backwards on me, because once you start up the ski lift at Squaw Valley, it's really hard for a horse to dump you off or hurt you. So, and they're pretty calm by the time they get to the top. And then Gordy took off on foot. He didn't really have the concept of finishing the entire trail. So Valentina was only 5. And I pulled her at Devil's Thumb. It was maybe 113. And she was tired. She passed all the vet checks, but I just didn't want her to have a bad experience. So Don Robinson was Ina Robinson's husband, always brought me salt tablets. He brought the water truck into Devil's Thumb. So I was just sitting there leaning against a tree waiting. We only had one stock truck that came in to haul us out from Devil's Thumb. And Gordy came up the canyon just looking like death warmed over. And he said, well, I made it farther than anyone has ever done in this heat. A horse had died in the North Fork Canyon. And he thought that was a message from God that could be him if he continued. So Paige Harper had pulled his horse too. So Paige says, just come over, sit down on the blanket, and we'll all ride out in the stock truck. So I gave Gordy what was left of my salt tablets and walked on his back. I only weighed 110 pounds at the time. And he had already started chiropractic school, or he had always been interested in medicine. So he says, Di, walk on my back. So I walked on his back. He spent about an hour with us at Devil's Thumb and didn't want to wait for the stock truck. So he says, I'll see you guys in Michigan Bluff. He knew he could make it over to Michigan Bluff. Well, by the time the stock truck came and got us out and got us into Forest Hill, and we got down to the fairgrounds, here comes Gordy doing somersaults into the finish.
Oh, funny.
That was the start.
And that was the beginning of the 100-mile run.
Yes.
Which is also an international event and really significant. Well, this has been really cool to sit and talk with you and catch up and to hear these stories. I really appreciate it. And I'm sure there's many, many more. We should show your book.
There are many, many more in the book
that Diane has written, and I know you're working on another one.
It's finished. My son is my publisher.
Okay.
Matt Claggett, and the next one is Return of the Necklace, and that's a wonderful story how living in Carmel, I took a friend through the Tevis on one of my mares, Susan Rogers, and she had Sitting Bull's medicine necklace that she'd found in an old trunk. One of her mother had married her fifth husband, and Susie found this necklace in the bottom of one of his trunks and brought it to me. She says, you're the closest thing to an Indian I know. And it really freaked her out because she was a dental hygienist, and the necklace was made of elk teeth. And anyway, that's the next book, how we got the necklace returned to Chief David Bald Eagle and Arva Looking Horse, who is the spiritual leader of the Lakota people. And I was blessed to be able to return Sitting Bull's medicine necklace to the medicine bag that made the medicine bag complete. So that's the next book.
Cool. That's awesome. Okay. I'm Erin McChesney. You've been listening to Tevis Talks. I hope you have a wonderful day and ride with joy and purpose, and we'll see you next time.